it is very crazy. I think if you understand it through a political lens rather than a legal lens, you maybe get a sense of what's going on. So in brief, the former head of the spy agency in South Africa, who is not a fan of President Ramaphosa, filed criminal charges claiming that all these dollars had been stolen from a couch on his farm. And in response to that, a panel was put in place to say, are there charges to be reckoned with here? In other words, a pre-impeachment trial. And unfortunately, the panel came out and said, yes, they think there is something to answer for. But they also noticed that they'd failed the evidentiary test. In other words, there is no evidence. There's a kind of a statement from Arthur Fraser, who laid the charges, saying he heard this and he's heard that. And so it's all hearsay. And the president's response, unfortunately, because in legal terms, all you would do would be to respond legally. His response was, well, there's no evidence, so I don't really need to respond. And legally, he's quite right. Politically, you may ask whether that's right or not. But it's got all these elements of a Middle Eastern businessman arrived on Christmas Day, paid cash for cattle he didn't take, which were apparently put in a safe, which was then unsafe, so they were hidden in a couch. So, who knows where truth is? But it's a wonderful story. I mean,
it is a wonderful story that it was hidden in a couch and then somehow was, robbers were in cahoots to get rid of it, to steal it. But he also was accused of then launching his own investigation and using his position as president of South Africa to talk to some of his counterparts in other African countries to try and track this money. Was there any evidence that happened?
It's unclear if there's evidence. So, I mean, he said himself that he asked, so a Namibian, our next door neighbor, is alleged to have stolen the money and nipped back into Namibia. And he's alleged to have said to the president of Namibia, please do this, subtly under the radar and so on. Whether he did or not, we don't know. And whether that's a criminal offense or not, I don't think so. But it may be if you're interfering in an inquiry. The president's argument seems to be, since I became president, I don't get an income from these farms. I'm not running them. They go to a trust that I've set up. My farm manager runs, the two farms that he still has. And so I really just don't know. And that has been his defense. I'm not there. I'm not farming. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Whether that's a credible defense or not is up to the listener.
Yeah, it is interesting because, of course, when you think back to Jacob Zuma, the former president, the level of scandal and corruption and state capture that went on during his time, one would have hoped that under this president that many of those corruption scandals had been put behind them. Has this damaged Ramaphosa?
Well, I mean, you're making 2 points. I mean, I think the second one is easy. Yes. I mean, how can this not damage you? Particularly when you say, OK, I'll resign, which was his first response, which is, I don't need to go through this. Certainly financially, he doesn't. I mean, he's a very wealthy and successful farmer. But I think, the first part as to, is this different from what happened under the Zuma's 9 wasted years? It's profoundly different in the sense that there's no evidence of wrongdoing. There's merely a set of hearsay statements by Arthur Fraser. And I think that Ramaphosa's track record for the last 4.5 years, although it's been timid, it's nonetheless rolled back a whole series of terrible things that happened under Zuma. So the prosecution authority has got teeth again. It's beginning to put people in the dock, in court. We are seeing people being ready for prison. And the reason the fight back against Ramaphosa is so strong is exactly that. The people who are opposing him, they either go to jail or they get rid of Ramaphosa. That's their choice. And that's the only choice they're faced with. And so fairly obviously, they've been gifted this by one of their own, and they have to go full tilt to get him to stand down, because that will, they hope, save their necks.
Yeah, so very politically motivated, as you point out. You've worked with Cyril Ramaphosa. Do you think he is going to stand and put himself through this? He seems to have the support of the ANC to continue.
I mean, my sense, I did work, I worked for him many years ago in the Constitutional Assembly, and I did some polling for him when he was running for president of the ANC. I never got the sense, and he would be quite open about this, that he didn't feel strongly that he wanted to be president. And politics, I think, had always been unpleasant for him. There was the early, fight against Mbeki to be deputy president to Mandela, which he lost, and it wasn't a terrain he liked. And so as this happened, his first response was, I'll leave, I'll resign, I don't need this. But I think the ANC, his faction of the ANC, has said to him, firstly, the report is very weak. So to go on this basis is just silly, because there's no finding against you and there's no evidence against you. But secondly, they seem to have played a kind of moral card, which is of what's left of the ANC, the only electable person is Cyril Ramaphosa by a mile. And if the ANC, in all of its messiness, loses him, they really are in trouble electorally. And so I think for political reasons, electoral reasons, or moral reasons, he's decided to stay and fight it out. But he must inevitably have taken some damage from this.
Yes, and to your point, if he is the only electable official for the ANC, how damaging is it for them ahead of next 2024's election?
I think, I mean, all the electoral trends are trending against the ANC. So we should be clear that even if he'd come out, if this had never happened, the ANC would be in electoral trouble. So that's just a fact. I think if he turns this into a game changer where he actually makes more courageous decisions. Most of his critics are in his cabinet saying terrible things about him. Get rid of them. You don't need them. Don't keep your enemies closer than your friends. At this point, you need friends very close. So I think if he does that and turns this into, now I'm going to sweep it clean, then he might have, that's an electoral play that you can make. Whether it works, I think you have to then look at the state of the opposition, which is anyone there really fighting to be the replacement to the ANC? The answer is not really.
Yeah. Really good to get your thoughts on this, David. Appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.